Well, hey, I'm Leela Witherspoon. My partner is Joy Moran, and today we're going to be discussing our project outlines. I'm going to start talking about Joy's project. You are doing your project on Francisco Toledo, right? He
Correct.
he was super cool. I had to read an article just so I could get a better kind of understanding as what we were going through, and I read the Smithsonian article. It was a lot of fun to learn about him, so thank you for picking him so I could learn about it. Um, so your thesis says Francisco Toledo's works on paper ignited a civic and environmental movement in Oaxaca City, elevating the city to global prominence in contemporary art. I love that. There was two notes I had about it, and I think it's a fantastic thing to focus on. And it's a he totally did that. First off, like the works on paper, I think it should just be like his artwork, or I would
Mhm.
probably remove the on paper part of things because his work was so broad and he was known for doing so much beyond that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I might just do that. And then I would, if I were you, kind of talk about like what specifically he might have done that ignited a civic and environmental movement. So, right? He was big into like starting like he was very giving with his money and like funded a lot of programs and things like that, or it was his activism, right?
Mhm,
Or
mhm.
his artwork as well. So I might say like so like Francisco Toledo's artwork and activism ignited a civic and environmental movement in Oaxaca City.
Like being more specific.
Just like what he concretely did. Um, okay. And then from there, the next thing I kind of talked about was so your artwork example one was the Handbook of Fantastic Zoology, illustrated by Francisco Toledo. And I tried to dig and see it, but like just knowing what I know of his work and that kind of thing, I can get a vibe of what that looks like. I would tie this as much as possible to your thesis, where so these wonderful illustrations of exotic creatures, but how did that facilitate this movement in Oaxaca City? If this is just like a chronological telling of his life or one of your favorite pieces, like how can you kind of, oh, sorry, on my campus.
Mhm.
How can you tie that into the journey that leads him towards this revolution in Oaxaca? Um, would be my statement is how just make sure to bring it back this specific artwork like to your thesis.
Yeah, like guiding it back to the main focus.
This second one that you had, kites. Oh my God, that was wild to learn about. So I think this one definitely strongly, if this, especially if he did a lot of kites, right? And he continued them, but like there was that like main one where he did the kites of the um 43 people who had been abducted or and that was very
Mhm.
much like an activist piece. So this definitely like ties into what you're saying in your thesis about igniting things and like his community involvement. And so I would with this one like definitely bring it back to the community. Um but maybe talk about like I don't know, the other kind of ways his activism also helped kind of ignite and bring his work to the worldview and kind of elevate that city to um kind of tie into that again. The what did we say? It was the elevating the city to global prominence in contemporary art was in your thesis. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was your conclusion. You have a chunk in your conclusion that says the artist background, style, and method. Describe progress for you. This was your plan to describe the progress of Toledo's career and his ability to use art as a platform to establish institutions, restore sites of his significance, and preserve tradition. So this is in your conclusion. I would argue that this is wildly appropriate, like, and tied to your thesis. Like, this is, I mean, the meat and bones of like how you're going to prove your thesis. So
Mhm.
that one concept right there, like pull that up and like include that in your introduction and then pull it through whatever you do from that point on. So,
Yeah.
his ability to use art as a platform to establish institutions. Like he did that, like he was wildly successful, right? Made lots of money, didn't really live a lavish lifestyle, devoted all that money
Mhm.
to his community, and his town, and like really funded those things. So, restore sites of again, all of that ties into how he brought up that community into like a worldwide view and made it such an art center was his philanthropy. And I would just pull that through the whole thing is my statement.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
That was my notes. That's everything I had to say on it. I loved it. I really can't wait to see how you finish it and where it goes from here.
I know the sometimes I feel like I get so focused on like what is the art and what is the form of the art, how do you describe the art, but then making sure that, to your point, tying it back to what we're trying to talk about,
Mhm.
um, and why the examples are relevant is something that I need to go back and clean up and edit and kind of rethink maybe why are we showing these, or do I need another one to prove a point, I guess, but
That Smithsonian
yeah, no.
Smithsonian no, I can read. Smithsonian article I read talked about him protesting a McDonald's coming to
Oh yeah.
town that he's in
Mhm.
specifically and like promising to be naked, and then he gave out tamales or whatever, but he didn't end up being naked.
Yeah.
Tamales
Uh-huh.
did the job. And they kept
Yeah.
through that like moment of activism and rallying his community, he kind of kept everybody at bay. Like that, I don't know. Those are I
I
read one
know.
article, so there's so much you are definitely going to know more, and there's so much more you could tie to it. But
Yeah, that's the one I was trying to find if there was I was trying to find the work that went with that because I'm trying to figure out how that ties in like from a like here's the work.
an artistic standpoint,
Because
right?
that's a great example, but I was like I'm trying to find what and it's probably just going and doing some more digging.
Well, artists are activists. You can even just talk about his activism too, you know,
Right.
because he was certainly a master of all mediums and all arts, and like just very prolific and very well known. And like that was also what gave him the platform for activism, and it's worth talking about too.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Okay. I'm taking notes.
You've always got the video too.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, wait, here we go. This is I thought was a great. And then, okay, just to clarify, these are all different artists, correct?
Yes. Yes, they are. Sorry, I
Okay,
didn't
okay, okay.
know them all.
No, because I mean it makes sense because they're all it seems like a different artist every time, but it makes a cohesive story. So I think that's something that was done really well to tie in the theme because they're all very different, but
Yes.
they all highlight a different aspect of what you're getting at. So I just went through a lot like chunk by chunk, like one, two, three, four, five. Um, and took some notes. So for the intro, I loved how you were talking about the convenience of a stereotype or the like how you're painting the picture of how these ideas don't really change over time because it's just easy to latch onto them or to it shows like kind of a way of like how they're repeated um, and especially through the artwork, which I guess we should just get into. But the artwork is, I would say, is a great way to start because it kind of put, for me, it put it in the context of like, wow, like we just kind of steamroll over these things or we just kind of like don't look or we don't pay attention, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So intro was fine. I didn't really have anything to say about that. And okay, so your second point, so your second bullet, point one, with the first artwork. This one I thought was interesting. And this is just a photo, right? Like that's all it is. But this
Which one?
um
I don't have mine up. Describe it really quick. I should pull it up.
the the one with the blow up turkey
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
So
the
that's
skeleton.
Wendy Red Star. That's Last Thanks. Um,
Yes.
yeah, that's really the one that started me going down this rabbit hole because I was so in love with that image.
Yeah. No, it's a great image. Okay, so what I wrote was um oh, you're talking about it's devoid of value or it's been reduced to minimal meaning. But like because I'm reading it and I'm wondering what maybe there's a way to include the type of value or to be specific about like maybe it's something that's going to be talked about later, whether it's like cultural or societal monetary value of a value that the stereotypes have taken away, if that makes sense. I
Mm,
mean, I guess that's kind of like a
mm,
very conceptual comment, but that's just how I was curious because you presented the details and I was like, oh, I wonder if Leela thought about this in this way. And or if there's room to play, and if there's not, there's not. But because it's, I think that would be might be hard to articulate, but I think there's a comparison to be made somewhere.
yeah, thank you. I will definitely. I think that really touched
Mm-hmm.
it.
Because and then I wrote because the surface level, because I said start with the surface level value of the idea of like okay, the Thanksgiving motif, and then go deeper of what has been lost or like what's been represented in the picture, but what is being lost through the image that like is trying to be portrayed. I guess it, and I like the way that you compared it to The Last Supper also, because it almost immortalizes this, but it's almost a parody, but it's not really. I don't see it as a parody. Does that make sense? Like,
Hmm.
I know that's not your point, you know what I mean? But I could see like the deviation from that original work. I'm just reading, make sure. Yeah. Oh, the word obvious. Is there a different word? Like this, I don't know if these aren't the right words, but it's something like distinctly or mirror that could, because I feel like when you say obvious,
Mm.
it's almost like you're putting,
Okay.
from what I've gathered, we're supposed, I guess it's important to avoid bias or what was it, the inclusion of yourself. So that was just something I noticed.
That's true.
Like, I understand your point, but I was like, oh wait, I think that's just a different word.
You're right.
But it's funny that that's the painting that's the image that got you into it because that makes sense. Okay, so then the second point of this canoe, the canoe and the sports memorabilia, you mentioned connection, but is there an opportunity to highlight the disconnection between the symbol of the canoe,
Mm.
sports memorabilia, like physically as a piece, but then symbolically, like what, um, I guess what the subject is about and how it shows that the symbols aren't being like these motifs aren't being used as they are meant to be used in their symbolic way, if that makes sense.
Hmm. No, I love
But I
that.
think that is me understanding the work, maybe. But I don't know if it's a point to kind of
No, but it takes it deeper.
right, like it's a to me it's like a formal thing, formal meaning like the form of the like the what does it look like? What's it feel like? Type of thing. What's going on? Um, Formal, like they're literally separated, but they're overlapping, and I wish I could see these. Like, what is in this newspaper? I would be curious to see if like there's a way you could describe. I mean, I can see a little bit of what's going on,
But
but I
like
think it would be a great thing
even what I've
to
seen
describe.
like is hard to kind of reference. It's just like a lot of like kind of cliche like photos and like newspaper articles and that kind of stuff. Um, but even I like want to dig deeper. It's frustrating to not do so, like because I'm limited to what I can find of it. Um,
I know, because it's like I really wish you could.
you're
I
right.
mean,
Dig deeper.
I think we get the idea though, because I can see there's some people, there's figures, there's faces. It looks like photos, but it's almost like I guess my point is what does the memorabilia do? What is the action of those that is the results in these images on the canvas looking the way they do, like smeared or smothered or kind of like almost forgotten about in a
Hmm.
way.
That's that's a very good point. I've really stayed surface level with it. And yes, thank you. No, you're right. You're absolutely right on that one. There's a lot.
I know that I love that one because I'm like, wow, because it's so simple when you first look at it and you're like, think about it a little bit. Okay, and then the third point with the totem pole, I happen to love this wallpaper and I want it in my home. I'm wondering, do you know if this is a specific plant? Was what I was gonna ask you.
For the wallpaper.
Hmm.
From what I understand, so like I wrote in my thing, it says vintage wallpaper question mark because I read that initially and then I've kind of lost it in the so I need to kind of redig and try and find the reference of what that is. So what I'm from what I understand, it's just and he did it a lot. So like there's a whole bunch of versions of this and
Oh, okay.
they're they're all just different prints. So I don't know specifically what this one is.
Okay. I was wondering if because I was reading it and I was wondering if there was any like symbolic meaning that was being infused that we were missing.
That's I'm gonna make a point of that. I will look at them. That's a great point because it's something I haven't really thought about is the wallpaper itself. What is it? I don't reference that within it. Like what is that bringing to it, you know, beyond just
Right.
erasing it essentially.
Yeah, right. Because what did I write? I was thinking about how, oh yeah, how because you're talking about the, I guess what's also interesting. So wait, this is a different point. What's also interesting is that this was not made in the U.S.
Yeah.
or in North America.
Well,
So
it wasn't made by an indigenous person of North America, right?
or
So it
that
was
either.
made overseas in Indonesia by some, worker somewhere doing wood carving. Um,
Right.
yeah.
No,
And
I thought that was interesting.
yeah, I did too.
It's like a whole different. What I'm trying to read my notes. Okay, so here,
How about artwork
I
four?
guess the idea. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
No.
Oh, sorry. I had a one more comment about the
Okay,
third
sorry,
one.
my bad. I'm not sure.
So I'm getting the sense that you're talking about how we are of the erasure and how we live amongst, but like those things are there, but it's almost like you have blind, like
Let's see.
everybody has blind spots, or like you kind of turn a blind eye. Um, but I was wondering if you could tie this into this idea, if almost this could compound on the last example to express how we don't recognize symbols for their actual meaning. It's just like another iteration of like what you're getting at.
Oh, heck yeah. That's a great
Like,
point.
does that make sense? Or is that a stretch?
No, that's cool. I did not occur to me, and that's why I'm like, what? That's a interesting layer to it.
Yeah, it's like about knowing but not validating almost.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
I guess I'm bringing that up is because I think I see the opportunity to like make your case stronger because you
Hmm.
have all these pieces that you have laid out, and it's like, oh, they kind of support each other anyway.
Hmm.
Okay, and then the fourth one. So this describe the way you describe this is great and it's very literal.
Yes. I didn't really dig
You
as deep
know,
into this one.
it's I love how literal it is. It's almost like
But I
at
didn't,
the base.
I think I rushed it
Go
and
ahead.
no, I'm just saying, I think I rushed it and I didn't really dive into what layers might come from it beyond what they said about it, right? As opposed to like
Right.
being a portal.
Right. Well, it's funny because it's almost like it's the bare minimum of what your topic is about. It's almost like this is to the core, literal,
Hmm.
what's being talked about. Um, so I said very little, love it. Um, and I'm wondering if there's anything to mention, if there's was this the do we know if this was like how long this was running, this installation or anything?
I don't know. That's a good point.
Because it's almost like I could see some people, this is their only forced, I don't want to say forced, because you go to a museum willingly. Um, like interaction or kind of like face to face with something that they have to think about that removes all of what you've just shown us, of
Hmm.
what you've just talked about, and solely relies on the idea of like of the land or not of anything that's commercial or so like getting away from like the brands or sports and
So we ran out of time. But you were just wanted to, did you want to touch on the conclusion or are we?
yes, okay, so the idea that I love the idea that came through of recognizing and confronting the impacts of stereotypes and society and culture. Uh, but the one thing that I guess was missing throughout the whole thing was what the work show how the work shows that or how some in some way it alludes to those ideas
Hmm.
or how you're going to present like these are the whatever stereotypes that are present or I would like that are present in these few works that I would like to talk about and here's how they're shown type of thing because I think it's a great case but it's like that point brought up the main topic at the beginning where I was like that I like I was wondering if I missed something because then I went
Oh,
right back and reread what you wrote.
valid. Yes, that's a brilliant. Yes, you're right. I should totally, just to the same point I had for you, which was always bring it back to the thesis. I did the same thing for me. So, well, cool. Thank you so much. Um, that was great. I'm super grateful. I've got a laundry list of notes, and I'm excited to get filming and finishing up my presentation. So, thank you.
Of course.